Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, feely humans. Welcome to another bonus episode of You, Me, Empathy. This is part 2 of the You, Me, Empathy 1-year celebration. Thanks for being here. I love you. Make sure to follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at You, Me, Empathy. Make sure to leave us reviews. In Apple and Google, reviews make my heart sing with joy and happiness and love. Seriously, though, it does. It makes me happy. So make sure to do that. You want to make me happy, don't you? I need happiness. You do, too. I love you. Thank you. I am rambling. Okay, this is episode 56, part 2 of the You, Me, Empathy celebration. On this episode, I chat with Eric Zimmer of the One You Feed podcast. I chat with Sarah Jickling, amazing musician. She has a new album coming out later this year. And my friend David Grabowski, who's also a tremendous musician and pipe smoker. And he's got a great dad bod. If I do say so myself. Okay. I hope you enjoy this. On this episode, it's another catch up. I catch up with friends from year 1 of You, Me, Empathy. We talk about suffering. We talk about just dealing with pain. We talk about social media and depression. We talk about self-care things and sobriety and anxiety spirals and Sarah's upcoming album, The Family Curse. We talk about dealing with death and being there emotionally for people who are struggling. Talking about work balance and how to find a common ground with others to make progress for humanity. Oh, isn't that a big idea and a big thing to wrap your head around? But that's what we do here on You, Me, Empathy. We get into the nitty gritty. We get into the heart stuff. We get into the humanity. That's what it's all about. Humanity is all about empathy. And empathy is all about humanity. Okay. Thanks for being here, guys. I love you. Enjoy this episode, episode 56, with Eric Zimmer, Sarah Jickling, and David Grabowski.
So I have Eric here. Eric Zimmer is the creator of the One You Feed podcast, and I had him on all the way back in episode 7, I think, of You, Me, Empathy, talking about depression, a thing that Eric and I share. We have that in common, as many listeners do. Hello, Eric.
Hello. Glad to be back.
Yeah, happy to have you back. So for the listeners, this is just a quick kind of getting to know what Eric has been up to. It's been about a year. This is the 1-year anniversary episode, and I'm chatting with a variety of folks who were sort of integral part of the first year of You, Me, Empathy. The first question I have for you, Eric, is how have you been?
I have been pretty good. First off, congratulations to you on a year. That is a big accomplishment. So
thank you.
Great work. I have been good. I was thinking briefly about this conversation and how have I been? And so I've had something going on that's been a little bit challenging for me. And I suffer from restless leg syndrome, which is one of those things that sounds kind of ridiculous, but is a real thing and is really misery making. And so I've really been learning about how I relate to that and how I make that better and worse in how I relate to a difficult and uncomfortable situation.
That's interesting. Yeah, I know very little about this syndrome. How does it impact you?
Well, primarily, I mean, what it is it is something that tends to manifest in an almost uncontrollable urge to move your legs.
Okay.
And sometimes, it does come with, a periodic limb movement and an unconscious twitching. So it's extremely uncomfortable. It's difficult for me to describe it in a way that gives just how uncomfortable it is. It just feels like, like your skin is crawling. The manifestation for me that's problematic is it really affects my sleep.
Oh.
And so, I can go through phases where I'm really not sleeping well. And so now I've started taking a medicine to help me sleep, which I don't particularly like. But it seems to make the difference between sleeping, like when I don't take the medicine, I might sleep 2 hours. When I do take the medicine, I might lose 2 hours sleep. So it's a pretty dramatic difference. But like I was saying, I think the interesting part for, the kind of things that you and I talk about is how I relate with this and how sometimes how I relate to it can lead to depression and despair, and other times I can relate to it in a better way because it's not the sort of thing that there's any real cure for. They don't know what causes it. It can be progressive. In my case, it has been a little bit progressive. And so, I can get into a particularly bad mental state about it, which makes all of it way worse.
Yeah, I relate to that. And I'm sorry you're going through that. It does sound, the way you describe it sounds pretty awful. And whenever we, of course, lose sleep, that certainly has an impact on mental health.
It does. And like I said, I don't like taking the sleep medicine, but it seems to be the best option right now. But yeah, it is difficult because normally if you feel really crappy, it's sometimes like, all right, that's it. I'm hanging it up. I'm going to sleep, right? And when that option isn't there, it can feel very challenging. But what I've been working with is, like I said, sort of how am I relating to it? Like,
yeah.
Am I telling myself like it's only going to get worse, or this is permanent, or it'll always be this way, or am I thinking about what it means to have restless legs? Like when it comes on in the evening, there are times that I can sort of do what is recommended for certain pain management, right? Like go into the pain, explore the pain. And when you do that, my experience is when I have pain and I do that, the pain sort of lessens and dissipates a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning to do that with the restless legs, and I'm learning to sort of catch myself, like, what are the stories I'm telling myself about what this means, about what the future means, and so, some of it is completely out of my control, and it is decidedly unpleasant. But I'm learning about the impact that is under my control, and how do I manage that better. There's this phrase and equation that I think has been one of the most profound things in all of my life, and it's suffering equals pain times resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the pain is the restless leg syndrome. It's that whole thing. It's my resistance to it and the stories I tell myself about it that really increase my suffering. So I'm getting a chance to, if I'm going to put a positive spin on it, work with that.
I love that. And it's such a important mindset I think we all have to find at a certain point in our life, because we all experience pain and suffering on some level, whether it's physical or mental or emotional. I know for me personally, I have chronic back and hip pain, and I know there are moments where that's impacting my mental health in ways that it really shouldn't. But I think I love what you said about sort of looking at it from like a control versus not control perspective, and taking a look at it and saying, hey, this is what I can control. This is what I can understand. And there's a little bit of acceptance in that, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I have low back pain that is, it can be relatively chronic. It's not crippling, but it's decidedly unpleasant. And I've noticed a really interesting thing about it is that when I'm having it, my brain is sort of just giving me this feedback loop, like my back hurts, this sucks, my back hurts, right? I'm in so much pain. But when I stop and, like I said, really go down and try and investigate the pain, like where do I feel it? What does it feel like? Is it pulsing? Is it hot? When I do that, I realize very often that it's not as bad as the story that my brain is telling me about how bad it is. It's almost that bringing a real consciousness to it. Maybe it dissipates the pain, but what I think it is it puts me in a more mindful relation to it, instead of my default habitual script that my brain. I feel like my brain takes a shortcut, and that shortcut is ouch, this sucks.
Yeah.
Right. And when I bypass that shortcut by really investigating, I realize, okay, this is more manageable than it seems when I'm not thinking about it. It's totally counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to kind of like meet it where it's at a little bit, because I know for me personally, with my back pain and hip pain, I'm a little bit persuaded by just, exterior sort of things, culture things, when it comes to my pain, like I can romanticize it, a bit. I think we all can a little bit, and maybe feel pity on myself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at it and just kind of be insular about it and say, hey, like I'm going to look at this and have this personal relationship and take it on my own self. It's like it's a bit of like being our own advocates a bit.
Yeah, we had a guest on the show, and I don't know if I can remember her name. I was saying to you, we've been doing it for 5 years. That's a lot of people. Toni Bernhard is her name, and she has suffered with chronic illness for a long time that just hasn't gotten better. And she said something, I'm not going to get this quite right, but hopefully I can get the gist of it across, that pain has three components. There's the physical component of it, the actual sensations. Then there is our resistance to it, which usually involves a certain degree of clenching around it, which actually can make that pain worse. And then the third component is sort of the story that we tell ourselves about what it means. It's always going to be this way. One for me is like, if it's this bad now, how bad is it going to be in 10 years?
Oh, sure.
But what she says is, if you look at it, two out of those three components, so if the pain makes up, or suffering makes up those three components, two of those three are mental, and we can work with them, by mindfulness, by being cognizant of what's happening, by learning relaxation techniques. We can't, those things don't help the one component, but if you take two out of the three of the sources of suffering out of the mix or lessen them, that can be a great deal of relief.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I remember the last time we spoke, Eric, we talked about depression being a little bit like a lack of curiosity. When, and I imagine someone who may be struggling with what you're struggling with, restless leg syndrome or back pain or some physical pain, like being a curious explorer into that may be a little harder when we're struggling with depression in that moment.
Oh, I think so. I mean, all this stuff is so related, as you were saying, like, physical pain can, make our mental health worse. Not getting sleep can make it worse. These things are all sort of connected. And sometimes when all those things are sort of turned up, to 11, as they would say in Spinal Tap, it's very difficult sometimes to really work with it. It's like, God, for crying out loud, like I've got it all happening right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that, I think that depression can make them worse. And what I found with this restless leg syndrome is that it can lead me into depression if I'm not careful. And I, like I said, that's the part of it I've been trying to relate with more is like, okay, let me not just automatically have this drag me into depression and despair. And how do I work to keep that from happening?
Yeah.
And I think curiosity is a big part of really relating to any physical or emotional unpleasantness, is if we can turn our direction to just like, what is that really like? Like I've been asking myself sometimes, like, I'm so angry. And I'll be like, how do I know I'm angry? Like literally, how do I know? And like turn inward and try and go, okay, how do I know I'm angry? And boy, does that throw like a thought interrupt, right in the middle of it. Cause all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm not sure. Where do I feel it? Like it's, and so much of the stuff is just so habitual.
Yeah.
We're just on autopilot, but that curiosity of like, well, how do I know I'm angry? How do I know my back hurts? How do I, like, what is it that is, what are the confluence of signals that are going to the brain that are telling us that's happening? And that curiosity for me is enormously helpful. And like you said, sometimes, if it's enough of those things are happening at one time, I'm like, forget being curious. It's ridiculous. Like this sucks, but,
yeah.
But sometimes I can, but more often than not, if I can summon a little bit of curiosity, it helps.
Yeah, totally. I think what you said about, the key word is looking inward. I think it can be exhausting. Like we talk about looking inward often on the show. Like it can be exhausting. Like managing our health, mental or otherwise, can be exhausting sometimes. And it's totally human and normal and expected to want to bow out a little bit from time to time. But the real sort of lessons in learning and growing is going to happen when we're actually being curious and looking inward.
Yep. And, I love what you're doing, with the show and, the title, You, Me, Empathy, because often it's having other, sometimes when we're really, in the thick of it, it's having other people who can gently help us remember to even try and do those things.
Yeah.
And the connection that comes and the healing that comes sometimes from just being able to tell somebody what's happening with us. So I agree, so much of this work is inward, but if we're not also looking outward and finding where the connection is, we're depriving ourselves and tending to make the journey a lot harder than it really needs to be.
Oh, absolutely. That's well said. I wanted to ask you, Eric, I was reading a study published recently in November, so as of this recording, November 2018, published by the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology, basically summing up that there's more evidence that social media increases depression. And I'm kind of struck by this. Like I'm conflicted about this report. On one hand, I see that, that makes complete sense to me. On the other hand, I'm also building this thing, You, Me, Empathy, this community, which requires social media. And so I'm a bit conflicted. I wanted to get your thoughts about it.
Well, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier about the nature of scientific studies. And scientific studies are they analyze a lot of people, right? And so they point out general trends. They point out, commonalities. They're finding patterns, but everybody's experience can be very different. And so, this comes up a lot with listeners of the show and comes up in our Facebook group often is, well, I know social media is bad, but, and, my response to that is it's not necessarily bad. What's your relationship to it? How does it make you feel? Like my girlfriend uses, she's on Instagram and she doesn't do it a ton and she loves it. And I think it brings her genuine joy. She doesn't get any of that, like comparing herself against others. Like it seems to be a genuinely benign and good thing in her life. So for her, I'm like, well, screw the studies, right? Because look at your own experience. I think it's very often all the studies are things that we can look at and go, let me see, is that true for me?
Yeah.
So I always, with people, like, how do you feel after you do it? Do you feel more connected to other people after you're on social media? Does it make you, does it do that? Does it foster connection? Do you enjoy it? When you're done, do you feel like that was time well spent? Or do you end up, getting done with social media and feeling depressed and being like, why did I just spend an hour doing that? Or does it make you compare yourself to other people unfavorably? Like, what's your relationship to it? And so I think the studies can show, in general, this can be a trend towards the negative. But I think we have to be our own judge of that. How does it, what does it do for us? I think I have a relatively benign relationship with it also. I don't do it to an extent that I feel like it takes away from other things in life. And the extent that I do it, I'm connecting with listeners of the show, and that feels enjoyable and important to me. So I think it just depends. And the best guide is yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree with that. And you're kind of validating my inner thoughts about it, because I think it's one of those things, like, you hear about how, to really create and foster a good relationship, you first have to have you have to know how to care for yourself. You have to know how to look inward and have emotional insight before emotionally connecting with another. It's the same sort of thing. It's what you bring to it and what you get out of it. And for me, like you said, I think I get a lot out of it and a lot of joy out of it, and creating connections and empathy and fostering those things. And so, so I'm with you. I think that's a good perspective to have.
Yeah, alcohol is tremendously harmful to a good number of people, and an absolute social, an absolutely wonderful social thing for lots of other people. It's not in the substance itself. It's our relationship to it and what it does for us. And I think technology and social media is the exact same thing. What's it doing for us or doing to us?
Yeah. And I get, I love that. And I think it makes me think of also just this cultural thing we have to want to look at things so binary and so black and white and so wrong or right. And the fact is that it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And I think like I said, I think the purpose of studies often can be to say, here's something to look at, there's lots of psychology studies that say, well, if you do this, you'll be happier. I'm like, well, there's a huge problem of replicability in psychological studies. I mean, they're finding that, a great number of them, they can't be replicated. So how true are they? I think we would be wise not to just take it because it's science that it's true. But you can look at that and go, well, okay, let me try that. That's a pointer as something that is said to help some people with depression. What's it do for me?
Yeah.
So I think they can be useful guides.
Yeah, totally. How are things going with the one you feed?
Oh, they're going great. So yeah, I guess if we spoke a year ago, then I was still working a full-time job and doing the one you feed. And in June, I left a full-time job, and now this is what I do.
Wow.
The one you feed.
Congratulations.
And it's a coaching program, and it took me 4.5 years to make that happen. But yeah, so that has been it's a dream come true, right? I mean, it's wonderful, and the show continues to grow, and I'm not at a point where the show really fully supports me, but I'm getting darn close. And each month, we head more in that direction. So from that regard, that's wonderful. The show remains, as you said, early on, it's the best thing in my life. Getting to talk to people every week, getting to hear from listeners what it's helping, how it's helping them, just connecting with those people. It's wonderful. So that area is nothing but sunshine.
That's amazing. And congratulations. What a huge, accomplishment that is, like to create this thing and 4.5 years in, be able to quit your full-time job and have it support you for the most part. Like that is an amazing thing. That's something I'd want for You Me Empathy at some point years down the line. But like, I mean, and you're doing work that matters to you deeply.
Oh yeah, I feel like I hit the lottery, right, with that, right? You know, I mean, and I didn't start the show with that as really even a possible thought. You know, I don't think there was any like, I just did it because I wanted to do it. And then, yeah, just over the years, it gradually, you know, got in that direction. What I'm working with is, and I've had to do this as I sort of set, you know, after a certain point, I went, I think that's possible, and that's what I want. You know, what I have to watch is that I don't turn it into a job. You know, because it once all of a sudden, like, it has to pay the bills. Now it's it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
I can get caught up in, you know, is it doing well enough? Is it doing well enough? And it's always been helpful for me. And I think this is helpful with anything we do in life that matters to us, is to try and return as often as I can to the intrinsic motivation. Like, I love talking to people about these ideas and these subjects. I'm benefiting from it. My intrinsic motivation helps me when it starts to turn too much outwards. And whether that be now about money, but in the beginning, it could be about listeners. Oh, are we getting enough listeners? Are we it's not growing fast enough. It's always been helpful for me to turn back to like, well, why did I start this? And what do I love about it? And that always sort of helps reorient me.
Yeah, no, that's beautifully said. And I think I'll play that clip back in my head again and again, because I think it's important. I think we can lose sight of stuff like that. And I totally foresee, or I totally see a scenario where someone doing their passion project on the side and then having to like, oh no, I have to meet the bills, and then it becoming like a chore almost. And what a spoil that would be to like have this passion project become a chore that has to, it has to support you, but it also like it has to be grounded in why you did the thing in the first place.
Right. And that's partially, I mean, it took me a long time to get to this point for a variety of reasons. But one of the big ones was that I very consciously was like, I'm not going to do things along the way that to speed that up that feel inauthentic. You know, the benefit of having a job all that time was that I didn't need to do anything. I saw a lot of people when I started in podcasting who were like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to become a podcaster. And boy, were they.
Yeah. Not many people do that.
No, I mean, it's a rough way to go. And so for them, immediately they were in, near panic mode and doing whatever they had to do in order to try and get money in. And, I've just found it way better to be like, I'm going to do this while I have my job, because then I can let it be about the thing and not about the money. And when I left my job to do this full time, I also did it in a way, I waited to a point where I was like, okay, I can survive, a fair amount of time if this doesn't work, so that I don't have to be in a panic mode, so I don't have to be stressed about it, so this thing doesn't become this awful part of my life. And then also accepting like it might not work. Like, I'm fully cognizant of like, I think it's going to work. I'm pretty optimistic, but if it doesn't, I'm like, well, then I'll go back and get a job. But at least, it felt like it was the time for me to try, but sort of take that bet. But it was a very educated bet.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so it's been 5 months since June. It's going okay? It's going pretty well?
It's going really well. I actually, so the company I used to work for just asked like would I help out for like 3 weeks during the holidays. So I'm kind of doing that because I'm like, well, it's a little bit of extra money, but yeah, it's going great. I mean, the show continues to grow, and I am spending, I started I've been having a great time doing this. It's for we have a donation program, a Patreon program, so it's for supporters of the show. But I've started creating a new episode every week. I call it a teaching, a song, and a poem, and I do a little teaching about an idea that has come up that I think is important, and I share a song and kind of what it means to me, and I pick a poem, and so I've been creating more content, and I love it. Like that's what I love doing, is that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's going great. And, one of the fears of leaving a job and doing something like this full time, I see this so much in people I coach, is like, if you all of a sudden have no formal structure in your life, sometimes everything falls apart and it's hard to get anything done. And I think, luckily that has not been the case for me. I've been able to pretty much stay focused and do what needs to be done and keep it manageable, not feel like I'm working myself to death, but also not feel like I don't have a job now. So I, spend my days, watching Netflix. That's not happening either. So like I said, in that area, as far as the show goes and all that, it's nothing but good.
Oh, that's so great to hear. I'm so glad to hear that. And let's wrap this thing up by, let's see, what can we say? What's a book you've read recently or have been recommended recently that you want to mention?
Oh boy, you just
putting you on the spot.
Well, you did the thing that just causes my brain to freeze, because I have to read a book every week. For the show. I mean, don't have to, but I get to read a book every week for the show. But as soon as I'm asked, like, what was a recent guest you like? I'm like, so I'm going to have to say that I reread a book recently that I really like, a work of fiction called East of Eden. And it's a novel by John Steinbeck. There are some things about it that, it was written at a time, so some of the things that are said there might be slightly offensive to modern sensibility. But it's really a story about what happens inside of each of us and how we relate to the culture and our upbringing. And it's just one of my favorite books of all time. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Nice.
So there's that. And then as far as like the kind of stuff we talk about, I had a woman on, her name is Julie Simon. She wrote a book on emotional eating. And, but I think it is such a well done book about how any sort of, addiction or addiction-like thing that we do. She really describes kind of, she says the most common cause of emotional eating is disconnection from ourselves. And I just found that to be so powerful. And I think that, again, you can apply that to alcohol, drugs, you can apply it to watching too much TV. But she then goes on to like really lay out in very clear terms how we can work to comfort and soothe ourselves so we don't do those things. It's one of the better books I've read in this space. I mean, all of the authors are great, but that one has really stood out to me over the last couple of months.
Neat. Yeah, I got to check that one out.
Yeah, she's a great guest. I found her very, very profound. The book very profound, and she's a great guest. So
nice. Yeah, I'll reach out to her maybe.
Yeah, if you look at her stuff and you'd like to have her on, I'm happy to make an introduction.
Okay, great. Well, Eric, where can people listen to the One You Feed and just connect with what you're doing?
OneYouFeed.net is kind of where everything is. Obviously, the podcast is wherever you get your podcasts. You can search for One You Feed, but OneYouFeed.net will have the show and all the other stuff that's happening around it.
Well, cool. And listeners, go listen to the One You Feed. It's a really fulfilling, life-enriching experience. Eric is, you could tell when you listen, he's deeply passionate about the ideas, and he's deeply passionate about curiosity and sharing stories, and it's worthwhile. So go do that, listeners. And
Thank you.
Eric, thanks for being a part of this little 1-year sort of celebration show.
Yes, my pleasure. Again, congratulations on 1 year. That is, it's a real accomplishment.
Thanks, man.
A lot of people give up. It's not easy to get one of these things off the ground and do it week after week and build it. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to hold on to that.
It's important work. It's important work. So I'm so happy that you're out there doing it.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Well, let's connect again sometime next year, and yeah, we'll do that.
I'm around anytime, and let me know when you put this one out, and I'll be happy to share it.
Sounds great. All right. Have a good night, man.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's just jump right into it. This is another installment, listeners, of this 1-year anniversary episode. Today I am talking with my guest, Sarah Jickling, who was a guest all the way back on episode 15. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I love having you. You're a delight. I love talking with you. So this is all my joy.
Oh, thank you.
So listeners, last time, if you haven't listened to that episode, Sarah's episode, and if you haven't listened to Sarah's music, go do that pronto, because it's lovely. But I want to just do a little catch up. It's been almost a year since we've last spoken.
Right.
Your episode came out in April. It is, as of this recording, November of 2018. How have you been? How was your year?
It was a bit of up. There were some ups and downs, as one might expect. So yeah, I think that. So back in last spring to last summer, that was a really difficult time for me, because I had applied for a whole bunch of festivals, and I was rejected from every single one of them. And I had a bunch of plans. I had a plan to make a music video, and that person dropped out kind of at the last minute. And I had a plan to work on my album, and it continued to be delayed and delayed. So I spent most of the summer playing The Sims.
Okay.
I downloaded The Sims for the first time since it must have been like 15 years ago that I played it.
Uh-huh.
And I just played it for hours. And I was so sad. And I isolated myself. And just really, it was a really difficult time. And I ended up even going to my psychiatrist a couple of times this year and increasing my anxiety medication. Because I'd also had sort of a falling out with some people in the music industry, that over really some really difficult things to do with like women in the music industry, and just really nuanced things that still to this day are quite difficult, I think, for the industry, and it's like still all very there's lots of people arguing over women in the music industry and how we should all join together and what we should call ourselves. And so I had a little bit of a I guess internet fight that also isolated me from most of the internet, because I kind of just most of the music industry, because I kind of just shut down there, stopped contacting people in the music industry. And I also stopped, I just basically stayed at home, and felt really upset and felt like I didn't belong in the music industry, because I had this falling out with all these different musicians, and I had been rejected constantly, and just everything that I was trying was not working. So that was really tough. And I've only, since September, I think, I've kind of been able to come out of that. And I did actually receive a grant for my new album. So my new album is happening, and I've been working on it since September, and things have kind of been, and I've kind of been going to more music industry nights and kind of getting out and meeting people, it took me the whole summer, though, or basically since I last talked to you, to kind of get over a bunch of different obstacles that were mostly in my head. Just that rejection, especially rejection from friends, rejection from the industry with all of the applications. That really, it was really difficult to deal with.
I mean, it is difficult, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. Like, that does sound frustrating, submitting yourself to all these festivals, getting rejected every time. Like, that has to be frustrating. I think anyone would feel frustrated and sort of a little bit fed up by that.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the music industry, you have to pay most of the time that you apply for things, and and they do ask you to put quite a bit of work into the applications. And I had an idea that I was going to get into a few of them. Like, I really thought, I'd released an album the previous summer. I was ready to go. I'd put the work in, and I really thought that I would get a few of them. And since I wasn't talking to anybody else in the music industry at the time, I just assumed that, like, I was watching through Instagram and stuff and seeing all of my friends play the festivals and just feeling like, oh my God, why did I get rejected from all of them? And of course, nobody's posting on the day of the festival being like, I didn't get in. Yeah. I am at home. So I just saw the people who did get in, and I would kind of conflate that to be like, all of my friends got in, everybody I know got in, and I didn't get in. And so that kind of just made things worse. Like, that, I just isolated myself in such a way that in my head, I had been totally rejected by everyone and everything in the music industry. And I was like, what am I doing? And yeah, it was really frustrating, and it was really, I really kind of hit a wall, and it took a couple of things to get out of it. But I think actually changing my medication was pretty important as well, because I had just become so anxious sitting at home that I couldn't really do much of anything. I've also stopped drinking completely, and I think that helped a little bit as well. Just kind of made some life changes there. I started working with a nutritionist about kind of dealing with some eating disorder stuff. So there's a couple of things that I did that kind of helped push me out of that really isolated, frustrated space.
Yeah, I mean, that's good that you were able to get out of it through realizing that you maybe needed a tweak in your medication, realizing you were having some disordered eating and seeking a nutritionist, realizing that alcohol may be an issue. Like, that's really good self-awareness. Do you know was there a moment, like, all summer you're playing The Sims and you're feeling low, and understandably, like, was there a sort of, rock bottom moment? Was there a moment that said, that triggered in you, like, okay, I really need to make a change? Was there a specific event or moment?
Yeah, there actually was. A songwriting teacher that I had from a couple of years ago. I did a little program at one of the community colleges. She messaged me and 5 other women who'd been in her program just over the years, and said, I really believe in you 6. I think you guys, out of all the kind of people I've worked with, are really trying and really have a chance to make it in this industry, and I would like to help you. I would like to do whatever I can to help you. And she organized a meeting. And I'd never met any of these people before. So these were like just totally new. They were outside of my my music scene experience. And so we met up at a coffee shop. And that was just like at the very end of the summer, the very beginning of kind of the fall. And I was there and like telling everybody all the different things that I'd gone through. And my teacher, she was like, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to call the man who's, he's the head of one of the organizations that helps choose who gets in the festivals, and you're going to ask him why you didn't get in. You're going to go out to music industry networking things, and you're going to get out there and you're going to meet new people who are potentially new friends, and you're going to try and work on being creative for at least 3 hours every week. And she gave us all different homework, just kind of listening to what we were struggling with. And it was just like a little bit of a like kick in the pants that I needed, because I started doing those things, and I met these new musicians, and I went to a music networking party with a bunch of people I'd never met. And I kind of had the idea that I knew everyone in the music industry, but this was just a whole other group of people who were so lovely. And I started going to, I went from never leaving the house to going to, like, I think in the past month, I went to 4 different music industry events.
Wow.
And just kind of really getting myself out there and pushing myself outside of my comfort zone and being like, you know what, I did get into these festivals, but it doesn't mean that I don't have a chance. And here's a woman who really believes in me, and she says she will do anything to help me. What do you need? I will help you. And so we've been meeting once a month. And that was huge. Just to have someone be like, I believe in you, and here's what you're going to do. Do this.
Yeah, I mean,
it was big.
That's huge. I love that so much. Like, because we often just get in our own ways all the time, and I think sometimes it helps to like have a third party perspective, or just someone believing in you and actually voicing it is such an empowering thing. Yeah.
And I think that, so on that very day, at the cafe, at the end of the meeting, I had a man who I'd met a long time ago who also really believes in me, and he's tried to hook me up with like a couple of very successful Canadian artists, and he just, he's a cheerleader of mine, and I hadn't seen him in so long, and he was with the artist Dan Mangan. Have you ever heard of him?
Dan Mangan. No, I haven't.
Oh, well, he's fairly successful in Canada, so I'm never sure kind of what's gone over to the States and what hasn't, but
sure.
But he's like a big name in Canadian music, and all the other musicians who I was with at this meeting, they were all kind of starstruck, and this guy came over and said, I have someone that I want you to meet. I want you to talk to Dan. And he's like, I really believe in you, and hey Dan, you've got to check out this girl. And it was just kind of like, all of a sudden, as soon as I left my house and started talking to people who believed in me, it was this like domino effect where suddenly I was meeting people immediately. Like as soon as I left, all of a sudden I ran into this guy who was like, here's a very successful musician. And I talked to this very successful musician, and kind of like he gave me a hug, and he was so helpful. And it was just like, it was really funny actually, just because it just seemed like this push that I needed. And all of a sudden I was running into people who were like, hey, I really believe in you. I want to help you. And all of a sudden things just started happening. And my producer was like, okay, like let's let's start the album. Let's get going. We're going to go on this day. And just things just started to happen again. And I got to go back out into the high schools because, of course, over the summer, there's no high school. So I got to go back out into the high schools and perform, which is one of my favorite things to do. So just all of a sudden, everything started happening again. And it was this big push that seemed, it just felt really, it felt really cool. It felt kind of magical. Like just the second that I get into this cafe and start talking, suddenly like people are coming up to me and saying, hey, yeah, you do good stuff. I want to help you.
Yeah. And it's such a good like example of how swiftly things can change if we just allow ourselves maybe to open up our hearts and maybe accept help from another or just allow ourselves, as you put it, Sarah, like maybe step outside of our comfort zones a little bit. Like you did that, then all of a sudden all these things happen. Like I think that's no coincidence.
Right. Yeah. And it really was like, so as of now, I'm in the recording studio once a week, and I have finished that music video that I had been trying to do all summer really quickly, because as soon as I thought, okay, I'm going to find someone else, contacted another person, they said, yes, let's do it right away. I totally want to work with you. Turns out I found a filmmaker who I really get along with. She already wants to work with me on the next music video. Like it, and I started just really focusing on this album, and I also, sorry, I feel like maybe I'm being a little rambly, right? Sorry, there's a lot.
Not at all.
Oh, okay, good. I also connected with a voice teacher, and she was another cheerleader. And so I guess one of the big things that I did do over the summer was I went to voice lessons, and I basically like increased my range by, I don't know, 6 or 7 notes. And
wow.
Yeah, and really, and she is another person who's she's so sweet, and she's so excited about, this new powerful voice that I have. And she came into the studio with me to help me record the vocals on my latest tracks. And just like, I just feel like suddenly I have all this support behind me for this album. And I did also, in Canada, you can get grants for music, because the Canadian government at some point was like, we need to make sure that Canadians also make content, because otherwise we're just going to watch American TV and we're just going to listen to American music. Yeah. Which we still do mostly. But yeah, they give out grants. Well, they'll pay for half of what you do. And so since I've got that, I have like a deadline. I have some of the funds that I need to kind of get going, and working with all these really wonderful people. It's really all of a sudden just kind of made sense. And of course, getting the backing of that grant at least proved to me that, maybe I didn't get into these festivals, but whoever was, the jury behind the grant, my singing teacher said, you're the only person I know who got that grant. So, and it's just for people in my province, British Columbia. So it was very, it was another thing where people were saying, hey, I believe in you, even though I don't know who those people were, but they chose me to give the grant to me. And it means they believe in my project. They believe in my new album. I've sent them some songs, so they believe in my new songs. And yeah, it just was like all of a sudden I felt way more supported.
That's amazing. And it's validating, it's like we, as creators, as writers, as musicians, all, artists, you really need that like mirror a little bit. You need like these people that pop in and out of our lives that are going to allow us to look back at ourselves, or, do that, but also, support us, give us words of advice, give us new insights that we may have missed if we were just going solo. Like we need that.
Yeah. And working as a as a solo musician is definitely like, if you isolate yourself enough, you can just get so in your own head and everything seems impossible.
Totally.
And I do think that for most solo musicians, like, it is really important to go out and meet people, and it is really important to apply for things and see if you can get them. Like, I went to a mental health and music workshop recently, and I'm amazed that they had that, but they did, and I met a bunch of people there as well. And it was just, we were just kind of talking about how in the music industry across the world, mental health is so much worse than in any other industry. Like, the suicide rate, the attempts of suicide rate is 6 times more common than the average population, and the success of suicide is about double. And it's the amount of mental illness in the music industry is like something like, it's hugely, it affects not only artists but agents, venue owners, all of this stuff. And we talked about why is it affecting musicians more? Is it because we are these crazy starving artists who need to be mad in order to create? And we decided no, because even people who own venues, even people who run festivals, those people are also impacted exactly the same way as the artists in the music industry. And so we thought, okay, but what about the fact that a lot of people don't take our careers very seriously? A lot of people, we also often get paid in alcohol. Alcohol is a really big thing in our industry, as well as drugs. The hours are completely all over the place. You are very isolated a lot of the time because you're often working for yourself. Yeah. And even just the financial instability of working in the music industry, all of these different things come together to make it a place where, you know what, a lot of people are struggling.
Yeah.
And definitely it's not just me, like, sitting, by myself all summer being like, why didn't I get into anything? And why am I even doing this? And should I just give up? I mean, it's a thing that so many people face in the music industry across the world. We had a guy come in from Australia to talk to us, and he had the numbers for Australia and for the UK. And they haven't done enough research in Canada, but just based on our general statistics, it's probably the same. And it was just really eye-opening to see, like, okay, this is a really difficult thing that we're all doing. So we can all acknowledge that and help each other, because we are just in a very difficult industry, and we know that we don't want to just leave. Even though, I've had many counselors say, are you sure you don't want to do anything else? Like, are you sure you want to go down this path? Because for people who aren't diagnosed with bipolar disorder and anxiety disorder, it's still something that can, bring people down into depression or give people a lot of anxiety, just the industry itself. And so that was really eye-opening as well. And I'm really glad that in Canada, we are starting to look at that and seeing if there's a way that we can support musicians with mental health issues. Yeah, it's really cool.
Have you heard of the Hi, How Are You Foundation?
No.
You know Daniel Johnston, the musician?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So schizophrenic and, has been making music for 30 years. Mm-hmm. But Hi, How Are You was, his first album, or one of his first. And there's a foundation now that essentially, it breaks down the stigma of mental illness specifically in the music fields. I know one of the co-founders of that project, and they're doing amazing work. And they put on actually huge shows out in Austin, because that's where Daniel's from. And they try to have conversations with big musician names, big artists about, mental illness, which is great. That's progress. But yeah, like not being in the music space myself, like I can totally see the outsider perspective being one of like, yeah, like we talked about it before, this crazy artist stereotype. Like we all sort of like, that's maybe the perception, and that there's almost a bit of just intellectual laziness there, where we're just like, oh, that's just what they are. They're a little crazy, like, and that's wrong. That's not right.
Yeah, and just the idea that artists, I mean, there's been a lot of suicides this year of famous musicians and other artists, and and people really do just say like, artists, wow, they're really messed up, and so it was interesting to like bring it to the fact that no, actually the whole industry is a place, it's kind of a breeding ground for this kind of stuff. Yeah, and so that was really, really fascinating, and so then I really kind of dove into this album, which I don't know if did I tell you about my new album before?
No, please tell me everything about it.
Okay, so it's called The Family Curse, and it's about the mental illness in my family, and it's kind of, I guess the whole idea is that when you don't talk about it, it can become a curse. It can become this horrible thing that is causing all sorts of problems within your family. And if you don't talk about it, it really does seem like you're cursed. Everything goes wrong in our family. Why is that? And that's something that was a message for me throughout my childhood. We're cursed. We're cursed. And so I've been doing some digging, really, and looking into who in my family was diagnosed when, and just kind of, I've been really talking to my parents. I brought my mom to therapy. I've been working on my dad in a different way, trying to talk to him about his childhood and his own experience with mental illness. And really, I just want to end the secrets. That's my number one thing. So sorry to interrupt, but has your family been receptive to this project and you're sort of talking to them? It's been really difficult. So my mom, like, she was so upset when I told her I was making this album, and I kind of told her what the first single was about, which is kind of the fact that I had to hide kind of certain things that my dad did to me from everybody, because it was a secret that just the rest of the family doesn't know. And so that's kind of what the first single is about. And she just said, like, how dare you do this to us? How can you do this to your father? It's going to destroy him. Like, it's going to destroy our family. And why can't you just talk to just us about it? Why do you have to make an album? And also, like, maybe you're misremembering things. I think that it wasn't as bad as you remember. And just like all sorts of things like that. And it was really the first few conversations were really difficult, which is why I got her to agree to go to a counselor with me, so that when we can talk about these things and she says, oh, maybe that didn't happen, the counselor can say, well, there's different memories, a funny thing, and, trauma can affect memory in different ways. And so now when I talk about it with my mom, with a therapist in the room, which has been helpful. And as for my dad, I haven't told him too much about what the album is about. However, he might listen to this, but I've been working up towards it because I don't want him to be ambushed. I know that he's just a person who's really struggled. Mm-hmm. And I think over the course of all the songs, I have lots of different takes on kind of who, are there villains, or are there just complicated people, and are there just is the abuse cycle just something that continues, or can we break it? And kind of looking into my grandfather and what he did to my father, and kind of all of this stuff. And I've been learning so much about my family just by asking, and just being like, I'm going to write an album about this, so please be honest with me, otherwise I'm going to get it wrong and people are going to hear it. And so I've just learned so much about my family and my parents, both of my parents' childhood. And my dad says, don't worry about me. I'll be fine if you release this album. And he said, I won't be angry at you. And I said, but I don't care if you're angry at me, but I don't want you to be sad. I don't want you to feel like this is me blaming you for things, because I do go into, in other songs, my own violent tendencies that have come out through my bipolar disorder. And I go into, how complicated it is to have trauma and then be able to kind of pretend that everything is working, and how difficult that is. And so I've been working on kind of letting my dad know that, this is going to be a process. And for example, like my boyfriend Greg, he had to listen to a whole bunch of songs about how much I hated him because he broke up with me for a year, and now he knows that I don't feel like that anymore, but I still perform those songs, and I still felt like that sometimes. And so I am going to have to perform a few angry songs, because I was very angry when I first was going through all of the different things that happened to me in my childhood. And I was like, hey, that's not fair. That's not fair for me as a kid. And I've had to, really work hard to not let these things take me down. And those angry songs were some of the first songs I've written. And now, even just writing them was such a relief. Like I felt so much better. Just writing them. And now I'm writing songs that are more like, how can we understand each other? Is loving your child enough if you hate yourself? And just really more nuanced things. Mm-hmm. But I had to get those really angry things out first. And they're going to be on the album. And I just kind of know that my dad will just listen to those ones and be like, just listen to the angry things and not hear any of the other stuff. Because, that's the way that brains work when they're, feeling depressed, and you're just looking for the negative things and you're not thinking about the big picture. So it's a work in progress. And if you have any recommendations, my dad has agreed to listen to audiobooks in his car on his way to work. So I was thinking, what kind of books could I give him that would kind of open up his mind to maybe getting treatment for anxiety or depression or something like this. I don't really know.
Yeah, I'll think about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can come up with some, and I could talk to Tony, my therapist friend, and I'm sure he'll have a bunch of books to recommend. Yeah, I think what you're doing is really important, and I think it's ultimately what you're doing is about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability and the power of truths, of emotional truths. Like you said it before, like your mom had said something along the lines of maybe you misremembered it. But the truth of the matter is your emotional truth, your emotional reality is real to you, regardless of if certain facts or certain details of that experience were different than you remembered or whatever. The reality is that your emotional experience was real, and to open up and talk about that, I think is so valuable. But of course it's difficult, but it's difficult most for the people who aren't willing to open their hearts to it.
Yeah. And I think that, what I keep telling my mom is, if I didn't care about you guys, I would just drop this album without saying anything,
Totally, yeah.
I am working really hard to make sure that they're in a safe space so that when they hear this kind of stuff, they aren't going to, be in any sort of suicidal risk or anything, because that is an issue with my dad. And so it's something that I really want to make sure that he's okay and he doesn't think that this means that his whole life was a failure or anything like that. Like, it's really important for me that I communicate that. And if this album can even just open up dialogues in my family, like in my extended family, I think it would be really, really lovely. If it doesn't, that's okay. Even just talking about this stuff, I mean, it's already healed me. I already feel so much better just kind of being able to talk about it, even with you or with, with my songwriting friends or with my vocal teacher who's helping me sing them. But once I release it to everyone, I think that it will be really helpful just to have lots of people who've had similar experiences, because I do think that mental illness runs in families and it's often not talked about. That's pretty common. And so if I'm able to connect with people who've had similar experiences and haven't been able to voice their experiences in the same way, then that will be really worth it for me as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would argue that the vast majority, I would argue that all of You Me Empathy listeners will find meaning and relate deeply to your music and this album. And I'd argue many, many millions of people if they're open to it. But I have to wrap this up. When is the album launching and what is it? What's the name of it again?
So the album is called The Family Curse, and the first single should be out in the spring. The actual dates of the launching, I don't have 100%, but first single will be out in the spring. Second single will be out in the summer, and then I think the full album will be out next fall. So I'll be dropping little things along the way, and I'll be sharing different stories. But it's still a work in progress. But I just wanted to share it with you because it's kind of what's going on in my life right now.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited for it. I'm really looking forward to it. Where can listeners get updates from you? Where's the best place?
Instagram is the place that I update the most often. So that's at sarah.jickling. And I do have a website as well, sarahsgoodbadluck.com. But if you follow me on pretty much any social media platform, because I'm on all of them, or on any streaming service like Spotify or Apple Music, you'll get notifications about all this. Oh, and I have started doing some videos on YouTube as well, just talking about songwriting and mental illness, and I'll definitely be doing updates on there. So basically, you can follow me wherever you like, and cool. I will definitely make sure that you know about what's new and what's going on.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being a part of this little 1 year anniversary episode, Sarah. I really appreciate and value what you're putting out into the world. It's it makes my heart full to know that you're making this type of music. It's awesome.
Thank you. And I had a lot of really positive feedback from my friends about your podcast as well. So a lot of people really loved it, and yeah, good job. Good job doing this, doing your work.
Thanks. Well, let's catch up again sometime next year, maybe.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care, Sarah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Hello, David. This is me and you. We're talking in this 1 year anniversary celebration episode of You Me Empathy. How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you today?
I'm not too shabby. I had a run this morning and went to Target right when it opened, which is a nice feeling. I like the giant shopping area, like free of people. It's it's kind of magical.
It's very relaxing.
Yes.
Very relaxing sensation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for the listeners, if you're still listening to this episode, this may be part 1, maybe part 2. I don't know at this point. But this is the 1-year anniversary of You Me Empathy. So I thought I'd catch up with some previous guests of the show. If you recall, David Grabowski was a guest earlier in 2018. We talked about disconnected culture. And we're just going to catch up because we're friends. And I want to see where David is at with his mental health, with his heart, and just to see how fucked up he truly is. I'm just kidding. I only say
That's
that to
a
you
lengthy
because
rabbit hole, my friend.
because we're buddies. How have you been? How has this year been for you since we last spoke?
Since we last spoke, I'm trying to remember where I even was. I was in a different apartment. I was in a different house when we last spoke. We were living in a duplex, so we've moved. So a lot of change, just a lot of change. And that's sort of been the modus operandi, if you will, of my life over the last almost 2 years now since, having my son and, being in a very committed, domestic partnership with my girlfriend. So a lot of change this year, and then in some ways no change, and in other ways a lot of change, and in all ways a lot of stress. So it's been a pretty stressful year, to be honest.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you usually respond to change with stress?
It's not so much the change that I'm responding to. It's more just it's been stressful. Like that in that way, it hasn't changed. And I guess to be a little more specific, I'm talking about like our daily schedule as a family and my work schedule and my work, balance and balancing, my full-time job, which we work together, with being a dad and with taking care of myself physically, and also with my side projects, which are numerous and demanding as well. So it's just been a very trying year in terms of juggling all of that and remaining sort of cool, calm, and collected, which I chuckle while saying because that hasn't always been the case, admittedly. So it's been challenging. It's been a challenging season. I've sort of hopped on the bandwagon of using that word to describe my current life, because I think that you can look at your life and things don't line up with the calendar year per se, but life has seasons for sure. And I think these first couple years as a new parent are probably I would imagine a trying season for many parents, myself most certainly included.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. You've also had some struggles in that. You've had to deal with some loss and some change on in the family front, and that's hard too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tyler's for those listening, Tyler's father, my girlfriend's father, passed away about 2 months ago now, and he actually was in hospice in our home, and it was all rather sudden. He moved in pretty much right away after finding out his diagnosis, which was, they thought originally just liver cancer, but it turned out it was pancreatic. And he moved in and a week later died, which is very, I've been around death a lot, and I've been to a lot of funerals. And the reason I've been around death is because both of my parents come from huge families. And so you just, as a result, there's just more funerals. But it's, it never gets easier. It's just one of those things that never gets easier. It's always very, very strange and, just kind of odd to see happen. It's bizarre in a way. And this could be a whole nother episode. So
do you, it's hard. And we as humans have experiences in our lives where we have to be strong for our partners or strong for our friends, or do you feel, I'm not saying it's a burden, because of course you love Tyler and you want to be there for her, but like, has that been a stress to sort of need to put on a strong face and be strong in that time of trying, that time of trauma for her?
Yeah, it can be a stress, especially when you yourself are going through a lot, to have to also sort of put on the strong face and be the rock, as it were, for your partner. Especially when they've just lost a parent. I mean, that's someone incredibly close to you. It's very difficult to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, death is never easy, but I mean, a parent, yeah, it's challenging for sure.
How are you learning anything from this year? Have you learned anything? Are you taking anything into 2019 that you're going to change, or you're going to do something differently and have it develop a different perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope to do a lot of things differently in 2019. One big struggle for me this year has been taking care of myself physically. Prior to becoming a parent, I was running pretty seriously. Fairly seriously. I mean, I would run like a marathon a year, which is, I think that's pretty good. And that's where I like to be at. And also, incorporating a yoga practice and things like that. But with how compacted my schedule has gotten this year, it's sort of been a choice between, it's like either I do yoga or I can work on my writing or my whatever music that I'm writing at the moment, or whatever other projects, the film that I'm cutting. So I have overwhelmingly chosen to not work out, because it's just, for me, much more stressful to not have any headway made on my creative pursuits than to not have taken care of myself physically. But I think that what I've learned this year is to sort of reframe physical care and, having a mind-body practice, instead of seeing it as this, like, it has to be, an hour and 15-minute yoga class. That is the only way I can do it, or I have to run for 40 minutes. I can just incorporate like 15 minutes of yoga, or what I'm trying to do now is just get up like 20 minutes earlier and do some yoga every morning to start my day, rather than just sort of jumping right into work or my writing.
I love that.
And I think making that a priority will be helpful.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that we do get it in our heads that we have to like do, run for an hour or something. We have like
Absolutely,
these weird, we take on these weird, I mean, I think it comes from culture, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think all it takes is 15 minutes, 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
it's really a mindset shift. And I think for me, like, maybe this is something you're gleaning for yourself, is for me is like, if I don't have that exercise, if I don't have that time on the trail or just a time in nature, I'm not going to be as effective in my creative pursuits.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you there. I think for me, echoing that a little bit, I'm just the kind of person who doesn't like to sort of like hobby in anything. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I enjoy cooking, and I started cooking when I had gotten out of college, but I couldn't just like do crock pot meals. I was like, okay, like I want to know how to, fillet my own meat and how to, pan sear, and I need to know all of it, and I have to crush it, and it's kind of the same way with working out for me. It's hard for me to be like, okay, like 15 minutes is good enough for now, because I want to be like, no, I want to do an hour of yoga every day, and I want to be able to do, a handstand for 20 minutes without breathing, and I just.
Why do you think that is about you, that you want to take it to the limit?
Oh, deep searching personal question here. Why is that? I think I have a little dose of perfectionism in my blood, admittedly. But beyond that, I just when I find something that I enjoy doing, especially something that I'm doing ritualistically, like yoga or writing, or music, or kind of anything in my life, I don't like to sort of half-ass it or dabble in it. I like to really get deep in it. I don't want to just skim the surface. So for me with yoga, like ideally, eventually, I would love to like maybe even get some teacher training under my belt, not necessarily to teach, but just to get to like another level. Like I always want to be growing in something that I'm doing regularly. And for yoga specifically, something that I found deeply helpful for myself when I have been able to do it consistently, I want that to be a part of my ongoing life, because I know that, it can make a huge difference in my longevity and, whether or not I'm walking around with a cane when I'm in my 80s or not. So I see the whole sort of spectrum of the practice, and not just the immediate, like, oh, if I do yoga for 15 minutes today, I'll feel pretty good. I'll feel a little better, or I'll show up a little better for my family. It's the whole sort of gamut of the implications of doing yoga.
It's interesting. I think that's a perspective that I don't have as much. Like, I don't need to keep leveling up in my thing or whatever necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it depends on what I'm talking about, but
mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if for you, like, there's a little loss of presence in those things. Like when you are thinking about, getting teacher training in yoga, and you're like looking forward, you're like looking to the future about like, how am I going to continue growing in this? Is there a little loss of presence? Maybe I'm projecting.
Can you define loss of presence a little more? What do you exactly
I just mean like,
while I'm doing yoga, or
are you getting what you need out of it in the moment? And
no,
are
I
you,
am.
Are you embracing that?
And that's been the realization.
Okay.
I think this year is that, again, it doesn't. I don't need to be doing it for an hour a day. It would be great to eventually get to that point. And again, my sort of parenting life right now is a season, and eventually Emmett will be in school, which I'll be sad about in a lot of ways, but also, I'll get a lot more time back. And so maybe then my yoga practice will increase. But no, when I'm in, like yesterday, I did yoga for 20 minutes, and it felt great. It felt really great. I put on some Helios. If you guys don't listen to Helios, I'd highly recommend it. It's sort of electronic ambient, very soothing music, and just got in the moment and, just stretched well for 20 minutes and breathed deeply and felt great, and I was like, okay, like I would love to keep going and do this for another like half hour, but like 20 minutes is, if that's what it is today, then that's enough. And sort of being accepting of that has been the big lesson this year. And, which isn't to say that I still don't want to grow. I do, in that practice, but I don't have to be pushing it every time. It can be enough with what I can get right now, if that makes sense. Do what you can with what you have
I think that's a really good lesson. I think we all have to get there at some point. Obviously that doesn't discount or exclude the more sort of forward thinking, the searching, the leveling up, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But it does allow for self-acceptance and sort of self-kindness, and I think that's an important part of it.
Absolutely.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard are you crushing life?
Oh man, well, I hope that I never refer to my life living as something that I'm crushing.
So
loss of presence.
I need to just fill the listeners in that David and I have this ongoing sort of running joke about people who use that phraseology, crushing it, because we think it's very silly and bro-y, and also
in all the bad ways,
in all the bad ways, in all the silly ways, and so we always kind of talk about crushing it
in online business these days.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we're gonna have a future business where we parody that world.
I still think that'd be really funny.
It would be fun. Conversation. It would be fun. So,
but how hard am I crushing it?
You don't need to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah. I'll just let you ask another question.
Last time we talked on this show about being disconnected and how disconnected our culture is. Mm-hmm. Do you have any new insights into what we spoke about last time? How are you feeling about that? Still as cynical?
I think, yeah, admittedly, I'm pretty cynical about where the world is going. In a lot of ways, I just read a long article on BBC this morning about this international climate conference where, shocker, the U.S., Kuwait, Iran, and Russia all were just like sort of stonewalling the attempt to accept this really important climate report that group that they belonged to had funded and sort of ordered. And this climate report is really important because it's basically is saying we're way off track for our climate change degree of rise. So basically the idea is to keep warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or less, and we're headed towards 3, which has some serious ramifications, and just the political stonewalling of it is just depressing. But yeah, no, I'm a little. I mean, I am sort of cynical about where the world's headed right now because I think that a lot of the systems we have in place, like the governments we have in place, are sort of a thorn in the side for progress right now.
Yeah.
But what I've learned this year, because if you listen to that episode where Nona and I talk about our sort of disconnected culture and our lack of authentic connection and how we're sort of driven apart in a lot of ways and what we can do to change that. I think an important thing to remember is that you can't always be thinking and talking about these things, which isn't to say that you shouldn't. So what I mean by that is these discussions are important. No one, hopefully is claiming otherwise. It's important to be somewhat tuned into what's going on in the world and to do what you can within your own community and your family and whatnot to combat, the sort of negative change that's on the horizon, or a lack of change in a lot of ways. But you can't be having those conversations all the time, And so for me, a lot of times I'll show up in a social situation, and I'll want to talk about that, because that's what's on my mind. But the fact is, like, eventually you have to learn to separate it. You can't just carry that around with you. It doesn't have to be your cross to bear. And it's important to know when to sort of leave that conversation alone and like live in the moment, and breathe and be there, and when to talk about it and when to not. So, I think a lot of folk get confused between criticism and negativity. I think a lot of people see critique as a really negative thing, and so in a lot of conversations I'll be critiquing what we're doing as a nation, or what we're not doing, and lifestyle choices that a majority of people have, or something like that are blockers to progress, and that can be interpreted as negativity. But I think that criticism can sort of shine a light on important subjects and subject matter that needs to be discussed. So I think I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. It's important to know when to not talk about this disconnection, and when to do something about it, and when to also, sort of goes back to what we were just talking about with yoga, when to accept things a little bit more, because otherwise you're just walking around with a kind of gray cloud above your head.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. I think you're right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. We can't do it all the time, but it is important to think on progress, think on how we can leave the world better than when we started, than when we came into it. I think about that often, and I think about, it does boggle my mind that there are people who just choose not to accept scientific fact about climate change, for instance. Like, I don't understand the political motivations there. Like, it's all very lost.
That's tribalism. That's what I'm talking about when I say that our politics and our systems that we have in place are blocking our progress. It's these things that have emerged, these cultural constructs like Republican and Democrat, are ultimately just division lines. And when you're divided across party lines about something that affects all of us and shouldn't be politically tied, but is deeply politically rooted, especially in America, you have a real serious problem. And it may end up sort of being a downfall in a way until, I don't know what has to change. This could be a whole nother conversation, but yeah, it's frustrating.
How do, like, on the one-to-one level, one human talking to another human, how do we break down that? Is it all about just breaking down the artifice of those political lines, breaking down the artifice of, what you were raised in, and getting to the nitty-gritty of the fact that it's just two humans talking? Empathy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way to do it, with broad strokes. How you actually go about doing that, I mean, it's tough. I had I wrote a big article about this last year, and one of the guys that I talked to is this man named Dan Kahan, he works with the Cultural Cognition Project at Yale. So they basically study why people believe what they believe about climate science and why they don't. And he said something pretty interesting. He was like, like true change isn't going to come because you're able to convince, skeptical Uncle Max at the Christmas dinner table that he's wrong, so, you don't always have to have the conversation. And like a lot of people are not going to be willing to talk about it because it is so politically charged. But I think if you can find common ground, and I think if we can focus on things like, instead of, proselytizing about electric cars and stuff like that, we can talk about, if we can make those things cheaper and incentivize them all and just be like, hey, look, this is good for everybody, regardless of whether you believe in climate science or not. That's one sort of mode of attack. Mm-hmm. The other, I think, is just time. I mean, I think it's only a matter of time until people start really waking up to the realities of what's going on. And I think in a lot of ways they won't. I mean, if you look at France right now, they're having these huge riots and these protests. Originally, they were about the rising costs of diesel prices, which were risen to help pay for electric energy incentives, and they're rioting. I mean, they've lost over $1 billion in industry now because of all the damaged businesses and damaged public places and burned cars and burned buildings, and it's really scary over there. But yeah, I mean, you see Macron, or however you pronounce his name, Macron. He's very progressive with renewable energy and everything, and it's kind of backfired on him. So I don't know what's going to take. And it may be too late when people wake up. Yeah.
On that delightful note.
See what I mean? If you dwell on that too long, it's like life seems real gray and scary. But I think if you just do what you can with what you have, you can do a lot more than you think.
I agree. Yeah. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed, but I think an awareness of self is allows you to understand what you can achieve, and awareness of self is a huge part of empathy and good mental health and all the things that we talk about on this show. So before we go, should we sing the You Me Empathy song together?
Sure.
I'm just kidding. We don't have to do that. But the listeners should know that David is the one that made the music for You Me Empathy, the amazing music that you all sing every time the show starts. And so thank David for that. I do want to put it out there to the listeners. Like, David and I have sort of teased the idea, or together we've teased the idea and joked about doing a You Me Empathy music video, which would be hilarious and silly. And I want to do it. So if that's something, listeners, that you would like to see, let me know. I want to gauge the interest in that. So I'm putting it out there. How do you feel about that,
I'm
David?
standing by, so you just say the word.
But you're into it.
I'm into it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, we could do, like, cool costumes, like just sweet dance moves.
Yeah. Or costumes, that'd be fine.
yeah, all of that.
Costumes are good. Yeah.
Costumes, yeah. It's like, what's that movie? I just forget. Screw it. Anyways, David, let's wrap it up. So you make music. That's one of your sort of side passions. It's one of your passions. I shouldn't say it's side passion.
It's definitely not a side passion.
Sorry, it's your passion. It's your core passion, and you're extremely talented. Where can people go to listen to some of that, find some of that music?
You can check out davidgrabowski.com, Grab as in boy, Owski as in Irene.com. And lots of different songs there, contact me forms. So if you ever need music for a podcast or a phone sex hotline, you know where to find me.
What would the music for a phone sex hotline sound like?
A lot of wah guitar, I would imagine. A lot of chimes, really reverby chimes.
Okay.
Maybe a little saxophone.
Yeah.
Never done that before, but if the price is right.
Okay. Well, thank you, David, for being a part of this.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Known. I haven't admittedly listened to every episode.
You motherfucker.
I know, but I have tuned in here and there to episodes that have particularly piqued my interest, as has Tyler, and we both are super proud of you and what you've done with the community there, and just the intention behind it. It's an important thing that you're doing, and I'm grateful for you and for your show.
Oh, well, aren't you a sweetie pie? Well, that's it. We'll end it there.
La, la, la.